Vivid verses.
The forwarded message came in at 7:14 on a Tuesday evening, while I was standing at the kitchen counter slicing a lemon for the fish. It was from Holden, who had been my closest friend since we shared a wall in a graduate dormitory and who had never, in 12 years, forwarded me a podcast link. He did not send memes. He did not send articles. When he wanted me to read something, he printed it. So when my phone buzzed and the preview showed you should hear this, call me after, I set the knife down and picked up the phone. The link went to an episode titled The Quiet Ones. The podcast was hers. I had, of course, listened to every episode she produced. The first 50 or so, with the breathless pride of a man watching someone he cared about find a voice, and the last dozen or so, with a slowly accumulating unease I had cataloged but not yet named. Her audience had grown from 400 to 90,000 in under a year. I had told her on the back patio the night her numbers crossed 50 that I had never been prouder of anyone. I pressed play. For the first 90 seconds, I thought I was listening to a thoughtful meditation on emotional unavailability in long-term partners. She had a voice made for this, warm, unhurried, the kind of register that made listeners feel they were being told a secret. Around the 2-minute mark, she began to quote an unnamed man. He said, and I'm going to read this exactly, I don't actually care if you're upset. I care that you're making it my problem. I went very still. I had said that. I had said that in the car on a Thursday in February during a fight about whether I was going to her sister's birthday when I had the flu. I had said it tired and I had said it badly, and I had apologized for the phrasing within the same conversation. It was a line she had quoted back to me in 3 subsequent arguments as evidence of who I really was, and I had, each time, accepted the charge and tried to do better. It was also unambiguously my voice, not a reading, not a paraphrase. My voice, my cadence, the specific flat delivery I use when I'm trying not to escalate. Lifted out of that Thursday in February, cleaned up, cut down, and dropped into a podcast with 90,000 listeners. Okay, I thought. Okay, before you do anything, listen to the rest. I did. I stood at the counter with the lemon going brown, and I listened to 41 minutes of my own sentences, some real, some stitched, braided through a narrative about a composite partner she called M. He was cold. He was withholding. He used therapy language as a weapon. He had, in one devastating passage, told her he loved her in a tone that sounded like a receipt being read aloud. That last one was not something I had said. That last one was an impression or an invention or a thing she had decided was true and backfilled. But the quotes were real. She had been recording me. I sat down on the kitchen floor with my back against the cabinet, and I did not, at any point, feel what I expected to feel. I had always assumed that if something like this happened to me, the betrayal, the public version, I would feel it as heat, a rush, the body preparing itself. Instead, I felt the opposite, a narrowing, a kind of cold clarity, like a lens being stopped down. The room got quiet. The edges got sharp. Think, I told myself. Don't react. Think. The first thing I did was not call her. The first thing I did was scroll back through the episode description, the show notes, and the most recent 4 episodes, looking for pattern. She had been doing this for a while. The Quiet Ones was the most explicit, but going back 6 months I could hear, now that I was listening for it, the slow construction of M. An anecdote here, a phrase there, a whole episode about the performance of reasonableness that I had at the time thought was about her father. 6 months. She had been building this for 6 months, and in that 6 months we had eaten dinner together perhaps 200 times, and she had asked me about my day, and I had answered, and somewhere in those answers she had been harvesting. All right, I thought. What do I actually know, and what am I guessing? Known. The quotes were mine. Known. At least some of them were recorded, because no one's memory is that clean. Known. The episode was live. It had been live for, I checked, 19 hours, and the top comment was a woman writing, "I feel like you just described my ex verbatim. Thank you for giving language to this." Guessed that mutual friends had heard it. Guessed that some of them had recognized me. Guessed that some of them had recognized me earlier in earlier episodes and had said nothing. I call Holden. "You heard it," he said before I spoke. "When did you know?" There was a pause on his end that told me the answer before he gave it. The episode about her father. 3 months ago. The bit about the receipt voice. 3 months. I wasn't sure. It could have been anyone. I told myself it could have been anyone. Who else knew? Another pause. I'd assume everyone who's spent time with the two of you. It's recognizable, man. The cadence. Once you hear it, you can't unhear it. 6 months of mutual friends listening to a serialized character assassination of me, and not one of them picked up the phone. I noted the observation, set it aside. That was a separate problem, and I would deal with it later. Right now, there was a more pressing one. "Don't tell her you sent it to me," I said. "I wasn't going to." "Thank you. I mean that. I have to go." I hung up. I looked at the clock. 7:52. She was at a studio session. She would be home by 10. I had 2 hours and 8 minutes. What do you want? I asked myself. Be specific. If you could have any outcome, what is it? The first thing that surfaced was the thing I immediately discarded. I wanted her to be sorry. I wanted her to look at me across the kitchen table and understand fully what she had done. This was a natural desire, and it was also, for my purposes, useless. People who build a months-long narrative about someone do not arrive at remorse through confrontation. They arrive at a better defense. Demanding an apology would give her the thing she needed to make the next episode. What I actually wanted, I realized, was simpler and harder. I wanted the episode gone. I wanted the record corrected in a way that reached the people who had heard the false version. And I wanted, past that, something I was not yet ready to articulate, but that had the shape of, I want to stop being a character in her show. Not dramatically, not with a door slammed. I wanted, at some specific and chosen moment, to no longer be available to her at all, as a partner, as a source, as raw material. And I wanted the transition out of her orbit to be so clean and so undramatic that it left her nothing to work with. 3 goals, then. Remove the episode. Correct the record. Exit cleanly. The first one was the most urgent, because every hour it remained up was another 100 listeners, another dozen comments, another block of cement poured around the version of me she had invented. That one was a legal problem, and legal problems have specialists. I went to my laptop. I had a contacts file organized by category that I had kept since my 2nd year of practice. Not lawyers specifically, but people who know who to call. I opened it, scrolled to M, and found the name of a woman I'd met at a conference 3 years ago who did media and reputation work. I had used her once, briefly, when a disgruntled former contractor had started writing things on a review site. She had been efficient and expensive, and she had described her approach to me. Over coffee, as I don't argue, I just make the thing go away. Her name was Alder. I looked at the time, 7:58, and I called her. She answered on the 4th ring, which surprised me. I had expected voicemail. I gave my name. I remember. Tuesday evening. This must be interesting. I need to know if you have 40 minutes. I have 40 minutes. I told her. I told her as cleanly as I could, without editorial, in the order I had learned the facts. I played her the relevant section of the episode over the phone. I told her about the recording, about the 6 months of pattern, about the 90,000 listeners. I did not tell her how I felt about any of it, because she did not need that information and it would only contaminate hers. When I was finished, she was quiet for a beat, and then she said, "Okay. A few questions. Did you ever consent to being recorded in any form, in any context?" "No." "Written, verbal, implied?" "No." We had an explicit conversation about it 8 months ago when she started the podcast. She asked if I wanted to come on as a guest. I said no, and I said, And I remember this specifically because I thought it was obvious. I said I didn't want to be part of the show at all, not named, not quoted, not recognizable. She agreed. You have that in text. I thought about it. I have that in text. It was an email thread about the launch. I can find it. Find it tonight. What's the jurisdiction? I told her. Two-party consent state. That's good for you. The next question matters. Is the episode monetized? Ads, yes. And she has a subscription tier. Better. That moves it from a personal dispute into commercial use of your likeness and voice. Do you know whether she has edited the audio? Yes. There are at least 3 places where my sentences are cut together in a way that changes their meaning. Best yet, that's defamation by implication on top of the consent violation. I can work with this. Here's what I'd like to do if you authorize it. Tonight, I send a preservation letter and a takedown demand to her hosting platform, and to the 3 largest distribution platforms the episode is on. The letter will not be a settlement offer, and it will not be a threat of suit in so many words. It will be a very specific, very cold enumeration of the consent violation, the commercial use, and the edited audio issue with a 48-hour window. It will include a demand to preserve all source recordings, which is the part that tends to focus people. How likely is it to come down? Within 72 hours? Very. The hosting platforms don't fight these. They take it down and let the parties sort it out because their liability exposure if they don't is larger than their incentive to host one episode. She'll probably fight it with me for a day, through whoever she calls, and then it'll come down. The question is whether you want to pursue anything after that. I don't know yet. You don't have to know yet. For tonight, I need your authorization to send the letters, and I need that email thread in my inbox within the hour. You have it. One more thing. Her voice shifted, fractionally, from professional to something adjacent to personal. Are you going to speak to her tonight? I haven't decided. My strong advice, as your lawyer for the next 96 hours, is not to. Anything you say will be evidence. Anything you say in anger will be evidence she can edit. Anything you say in sadness will be an episode. If you must speak to her, keep it to 4 sentences or fewer and assume every word is being recorded. But I would prefer you say nothing until the letters land. Understood. I'll have the drafts to you in 90 minutes. Sign them and send them back and I'll route them tonight. She hung up. I sat at the laptop and I noticed with some interest that my hands were steady. I had expected them to shake. They were not shaking. The cold clarity had not lifted. If anything, it had deepened. Good, I thought. Use it. I found the email thread in under 4 minutes. It was from 8 months ago. Subject line podcast, launch stuff. Her email was warm, a little performative, asking if I wanted to come on as a guest or even just be mentioned. My reply was 4 paragraphs of which 2 were relevant. I had written, I'm thrilled for you and I'll listen to every episode, but I want to be completely off the show. Not a guest, not a mention, not a my partner said anecdote. Nothing that would make someone who knows me recognize me. Can you commit to that? It matters to me. Her reply, absolutely. You have my word. The show is about my own experiences, not ours. I forwarded the thread to Alder. I made a folder on my laptop. I started downloading every episode of the podcast and every newsletter she'd sent in the last 8 months because I wanted a sealed archive of the material before any of it was modified. It took about 40 minutes. While it ran, I went back to the kitchen. The fish was fine. I finished slicing the lemon. I cooked the fish. I ate it at the counter, standing up because I did not want to sit at the table tonight. At 9:34, Alder's drafts arrived. I read all 3 letters. They were, as promised, cold. Not in tone, which was neutral, but in their precision. Every sentence did exactly 1 piece of work. There were no adjectives. There were no threats. There were citations to 4 statutes, a named appellate case, and a platform policy. The longest letter was 3 pages. I signed all 3 and sent them back. At 9:51, I got a one-line reply from Alder, routing now. You'll hear from her within 2 hours. At 10:07, her key turned in the lock. For sentences or fewer, I told myself, assume everything is recorded. Don't give her anything. She came in with the particular brightness she had when a studio session had gone well. Keys tossed in the bowl, jacket on the hook. Hey babe, I'm starving, did you eat? She didn't look at me closely. She was still in the glow of her own evening, which meant she hadn't checked her email in the car. I ate, I said. There's fish in the oven. You're a hero. She disappeared down the hall toward the bedroom to change. I loaded the dishwasher. I wiped the counter. I noted with the same cold interest that I was going to be able to do this, to be in the room with her, to be civil, for however many hours it took for the letter to land. The cold clarity extended out and included her in it. I was not angry at her. I was not, at that particular moment, anything at her. I was cataloging. At 10:22, her phone made the specific sound it made for emails marked urgent by her filter. She was in the bedroom. I heard her pick up the phone. I heard the sound of her reading. I heard nothing for a very long time, perhaps 90 seconds. Then I heard her say, very quietly, what? I went into the living room and sat down with a book. I did not open it. She came out of the bedroom in her sweatpants with her phone in her hand, and her face had gone through 3 expressions in the time it took her to cross from the hall to the sofa. The first was confusion. The second was fear. The third, and the one that had settled by the time she reached me, was a very careful arrangement of hurt. Did you, she started and stopped. Did you send this? I had it sent. You had. She looked at the phone again, as if she were rereading, though I was certain she had read it at least twice. You didn't talk to me. That's right. You sent a legal letter. To me. Without saying anything. We could have, her voice caught. This was interesting to watch because I could see, in real time, her considering which register to land in. She tried hurt first, because hurt had worked on me for, well, however long it had worked. Don't engage the emotional frame. Don't explain yourself. Anything you explain becomes material. I'd like you to read the letter all the way through, I said, and talk to a lawyer before you say anything else to me. A lawyer? About us. About the episode. She sat down on the far end of the sofa. She was very still. I had watched her workshop faces in the bathroom mirror before podcast recordings, not cynically, just with the professional attention of someone whose instrument was her own presentation, and I could see her now looking for the right one. She tried and discarded several. Eventually she arrived at one I had not seen before, which was something like bewildered sincerity. I don't understand why you're doing this. The episode isn't about you. Isn't you. I did not answer. I had used 4 sentences already, and I was trying to be economical. Isn't you, she said again, with more emphasis, as if the repetition were a kind of proof. It's a composite. It's a character built out of things I've heard from friends, from listeners, from, yes, okay, from some of what's come up between us, but the character is, the audio is me. This stopped her. Her mouth opened slightly. She looked at her phone. The audio. In the episode. The quotes. That's my voice. That's me. In our kitchen, in our car, in our bedroom. You recorded me. The bewildered sincerity held for another 2 seconds and then, to her credit, dropped because she was too smart to maintain it against a specific fact. What replaced it was something more careful. I watched her recalibrate. Those are voice memos, she said. I make voice memos of our conversations sometimes for my own processing. I've told you that. You have never told me that. I'm sure I have. I do it when something we've talked about sticks with me. It's a journaling thing. I haven't, those aren't. They're in an episode. with 90,000 listeners. Monetized. Edited. They're processed. She had found a word, and she was going to hold on to it. They're layered there. You can't even tell it to you, no one would. Holden sent me the episode tonight. She closed her eyes. Holden sent me the episode, I said again, because he recognized my voice. He has heard it for 12 years. He recognized it 3 months ago in the episode about your father, and he sat with it for 3 months because he wasn't sure, and tonight he was sure. He is not the only person who has recognized me. He is only the first one to tell me. She opened her eyes. They were wet. Whether the wetness was genuine or summoned, I could not tell, and I noted that my inability to tell was itself a data point. I never said your name. You didn't have to. You're blowing this. I'd like you to talk to a lawyer before you finish that sentence. She stopped. I watched her weigh, visibly, whether to push through and whether pushing through would help her. She was, in her way, as good at real-time calculation as I was. It was one of the things that had made her compelling company for a long time. She decided, correctly, not to push through. Can we just talk? As us. Not through letters. Can we just? No. She flinched. I had not raised my voice. I had said it the way you'd decline a second helping of something. Not tonight, I said, and I gave her one more sentence because it was the last one I intended to give her on this subject. I'm sleeping in the study. In the morning, I'll be out by 7. The letter is clear about what needs to happen by Friday. After Friday, we'll talk about the rest. I stood up. I took the book I had not been reading. I went to the study, and I closed the door, and I did not lock it because locking it would have said something I did not want to say yet. I slept, which surprised me. I slept for 5.5 hours, dreamless, and when I woke at 5:40, I had the very specific sensation of a chess player who has put a position down the night before and woken up to find the board had not moved. I showered. I made coffee. I packed a small bag, laptop, charger, 3 days of clothes, the paper file I kept in the locked drawer of the study desk. At 6:53, I let myself out of the apartment. She was still asleep, or was pretending to be, which came to the same thing. I drove to a service flat I had booked at 11 the previous evening, on a hunch that I would want somewhere to be that was not hers and not a friend's. I paid for a week. I set up my laptop at the small desk by the window. At 8:02, I emailed Alder, slept at a shortlet. She knows the letter arrived. No statement made. Available all day. Her reply came in 90 seconds, good. Hosting platform already responded to preservation demand. Her counsel, yes, she is one as of 11:40 last night, replied at 7 this morning with a request to extend the window by 5 days. Denied. Episode will be down by Friday noon, or we file. Please sit tight and do nothing public. Do nothing public. I had no intention of doing anything public. Public was the trap. Public was what she was good at. The entire premise of her show was that she had a more developed language for this kind of situation than I did, and any attempt by me to contest her on her own platform would be a gift to her narrative arc. But I did, at some point, need to put a thing on the record. Not a war, not a response, a correction. And I needed to do it in a way that would be heard by the specific audience that had heard the false version. I thought about this for most of Wednesday. I thought about it while I worked on the project I had been quietly building for 6 months, a project I had not told her about. Not because I was hiding it, but because it was not yet ready to show, and I had learned in the last 18 hours that this reticence had probably protected me from having the project become material too. I thought about it while I walked around the block at lunch. I thought about it while I did not eat dinner. By Wednesday evening, I had the shape of it. I would not make a statement. Statements invited responses. I would not write an essay. Essays invited essays. What I would do was leave a comment. One comment. On the platform where her episode lived. After the episode came down, when the page was a stub, this episode is no longer available. The comment section would still be there, frozen, with its hundreds of listener reactions. A comment left there after the takedown would be read by a very specific audience. The people who had heard the false version, who had come back to the page to see what had happened, who were now looking, whether they admitted it or not, for another account. The comment needed to do 3 things. It needed to establish that the quotes in the episode had been recorded without consent. It needed to establish that the edited arrangement of those quotes had misrepresented what I had said. And it needed to do both of those things without naming her, without insulting her, without raising my voice, and without saying a single thing that wasn't verifiable. I drafted it Thursday morning. I drafted it 12 times. Each draft was shorter than the last. The version I settled on was 2 sentences, 41 words. I did not show it to Alder for approval because it was not legal. I showed it to Holden. "It's exactly right," he said on the phone after reading it twice. "There's nothing in there anyone can argue with. It's almost clinical." Clinical is the idea. "You want me to share it when it goes up?" "No, please don't. If it's going to move, let it move on its own. I don't want a coordinated thing. I want it to be a note left in a room." Understood. The episode came down at 11:47 Friday morning, 13 minutes before Alder's deadline. I got an alert from the monitoring tool I had set up on Tuesday night. I went to the episode page. The audio was gone. The title was gone. The show notes were gone. The URL resolved to a thin message. "This episode is no longer available." And underneath it, still visible, the comment thread, several hundred listeners long, frozen in place with its praise and its resonance and its "thank you for saying this" and its "I needed this today." At 12:08, I posted my comment. It read, "The quotes attributed to M in this episode were recorded from my private conversations without my consent over several months and edited in ways that changed their meaning. I asked to not be part of this show before it launched, and I have a written agreement to that effect." I closed the laptop. I went for a walk. I did not check the comment for 4 hours. When I came back and opened it, it had 2,000 replies and was still climbing. I read the first 30. I read the next 30. I stopped reading it around the 100th because I had seen enough to know what was happening. The audience that had come to the episode looking for the second perspective had found it. They had found it in a form that was impossible to dismiss. No tone, no grievance, no counter-performance, just 2 sentences and the phrase "written agreement." The comments were, as Alder would later tell me on the phone, doing my work for me. Listeners were quoting back to each other her agreement to keep me off the show. They were asking in the particular way that audiences ask when they have been given a piece of information they cannot unsee. Wait, what else was edited? A dozen of them had gone back to earlier episodes and were posting timestamps. I did not engage with any of it. I had said the thing I was going to say. I closed the tab. Alder called me at 5:30. "I've been watching your comment. I assume it's doing more than the episode did. I know. You understand I can't advise you on it because it's not legal work. But if I were advising you, I'm not going to follow up with anything else." Good. That's what I would have said. The restraint is the loudest part. If you post anything else, the restraint evaporates. A pause. She's going to respond. Probably this weekend. Probably a long post. Probably some version of "I have made mistakes, but I am being mischaracterized. I want you to not read it until Monday, and I want you to not reply to it at all." I won't. Separately, as your lawyer, she has, through counsel, asked about terms. She wants to know what you want. I have been thinking about this for 3 days. I had a list. I want a signed agreement that she will not reference me identifiably or in a way recognizable to a reasonable listener in any future episode, newsletter, post, interview, or public communication for the duration of her career. I want destruction verified of all recordings she has of me, with a clause that makes any future use of preserved copies actionable. I want a one-line correction on the show's main feed, the wording of which I will approve. That's it. I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for a public apology. I don't want either. Alder was quiet for a beat. The no reference ever clause is the one she'll fight. Everything else she'll sign tonight. That's the one I care about. Understood. One more thing. I want the correction to go up before any post she writes. If she writes a long post on Sunday and then the correction goes up on Monday, the correction reads as a response. I want the correction to go up first, so her post reads as a response to it. Another beat. You've thought about this? Yes. Okay, I'll push. I think I can get the correction up by Saturday morning. She got it up by Saturday morning. It was one line. The episode, titled The Quiet Ones, released Monday, contained audio recorded and used without the subject's consent. It has been removed. I had approved that wording, word for word, with Alder at 11 on Friday night. It lived as a pinned post at the top of her feed. It was the first thing any listener saw. Her long post went up Sunday afternoon. I did not read it until Tuesday, as instructed. When I read it, I found that Alder had been right. It was a careful piece of writing, full of the word accountability, structurally organized as a journey from defense to contrition to a larger meditation on the ethics of memoir. It was considered purely as craft, very good. It would have landed devastatingly well if it had gone up first. Going up after the correction, after my 2 sentences, after the frozen comment thread, it landed as what it was, a second account trying to recover ground that a first account had already taken. I did not reply to it. I did not acknowledge it. Holden called Tuesday night and said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I'm fine," and I was, to my slight surprise, telling the truth. The negotiation took 3 more weeks. She fought the lifetime non-reference clause, exactly as Alder had predicted, and eventually signed a version of it that was narrower than I had wanted and broader than she had wanted. The recordings were destroyed under a protocol Alder drafted. We moved out of the apartment, or rather I did, in a single afternoon, while she was not home, with 2 friends in a van. I left her the furniture and took the books. I did not leave a note. A note would have been material. I did not see her again in person after the Friday night of the episode. I want to be careful about this part because it is the part where people expect a reckoning, some final scene, a phone call, a coffee 3 months later where something is said, and there was nothing of the sort. I did not call her. She did not call me. When mutual friends asked if there was going to be a conversation, I said there wasn't, and when they pressed, I said what I had to say in a comment, and she said what she had to say in a post, and there is no version of a conversation between us now that is for us rather than for her next episode. And so there isn't going to be one. Some of those friends, the ones who had listened for 6 months and said nothing, I also stopped speaking to. Not with an announcement. I simply did not pick up when they called and did not reply to their texts, and eventually they stopped trying. I had, before all this, believed in the idea that friendships survive mistakes. I still believe that. I no longer believe that friendships survive the specific mistake of sitting in silence while someone you claim to care about is being dismantled for an audience. That is a different category of mistake, and I learned in the weeks after that my instinct to exit cleanly from people who had failed that test was not anger. I was not angry at them. It was simply the recognition that I had been mistaken about who they were and that the mistake was mine to correct. The project I had been working on, the one I had not told her about, came out the following spring. It did what I had hoped it would do, and then some. The numbers are not relevant here. What is relevant is that in the months after its release, I received a number of messages from people. Some of them were listeners, some of them former mutual friends, some of them strangers, who wanted to tell me they had been wrong about me. I did not reply to any of them. Not because I held a grudge, because there was nothing useful to say. One of them, Holden told me, was from her. A long message, apparently sent to him and not to me, asking him to pass along that she had seen the project and that she was proud. Holden asked me, carefully, if I wanted to know what it said. I thought about it for perhaps 4 seconds. No, I said. Thank you. But no. He nodded. He did not ask again. And that, more than anything else I did in those weeks, more than the letter, more than the comment, more than the negotiated clause, was the piece I understood to be the whole point. Not the refusal itself, the ease of the refusal, the absence of temptation, the fact that the version of me she had built for her audience, the cold one, the withholding one, the one who couldn't love her properly, had required, in order to exist, a version of me who still wanted her approval. And that version was gone. Not killed, not exiled, simply no longer there, in the way that a room you have walked out of is no longer there. I went back to my desk. I opened the next piece of work. The light in the flat was good at that hour. I began.
Thanks for listening.